Hello and welcome to the Second Tier Podcast. I'm Ryan Dilks and I'm joined by the Brandon Thomas Asante to my Adam Armstrong. It's Justin Peach.
Good day to you, Ryan.
And here we are, Justin Peach. We are just one game away from the end of the championship season. What a roller coaster it has been. And the playoffs, the first couple of legs got us a bit worried about whether we're actually going to have much drama. The second legs, we've had a bit more going our way, haven't we? We've had a bit more entertainment.
Well, we've had 7 goals, 8 goals actually across the 2 legs, which is 2 games. It's been impressive considering how, I wouldn't say how bland the first set of legs were, but the second set of legs literally was fantastic.
Yeah, I much preferred one pair of legs to the other pair of legs. I can tell you that much for sure, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the number 1 championship podcast, the Second Tier. Thank you for joining us wherever you are. Before we get on to tonight's playoff semi-final, a reminder for everyone listening that the Second Tier is going live next Thursday, the 23rd of May. We are bringing you our first ever live show. We've got a bumper preview of the Championship Playoff Final lined up for you. Expect hot takes, hot debates. We'll be getting you involved in the conversation and possibly a surprise or two along the way. Plus our friends at SBK will be there handing out free bets for the final. What more could you possibly want from a night out? So come join us next Thursday, May the 23rd at the Horny Man at Hayes.
It's just funny.
Don't know what you're giggling about, Justin. It's right between London Bridge and Tower Bridge. Doors open at 7 p.m. The show kicks off at 7:30, and the best bit, it's only £5. £5. So come hang out with your pals at the Second Tier. Hit the link in the show notes of this very episode to get your seat. There's only a very limited allocation, so you've got to be quick. Come join us next Thursday at the Horny Man. Is that right with you, Justin?
Yeah, £5 at the Horny Man. What can you do for London for £5 at the Horny Man? Nothing.
Not buy a pint, probably.
Exactly. It's cheaper to come and see us.
It actually is. It'll be cheaper buying entry to the place than it would be getting a pint anywhere in London. So you've got to keep that in mind. But here we are talking about Southampton v West Brom, the second leg of this playoff semi-final. And Southampton are on their way to Wembley. It's after beating West Brom 3-1 in the playoff second leg. We were hopeful of this being a competitive game, much more competitive than the Leeds v Norwich game anyway. But in the end, it was very comfortable for Southampton, wasn't it?
It really was, and I think there was quite a few things that really impressed me from Southampton's perspective. One being the tactical switch-up from Russell Martin. They went more direct in the first half. Okay, it was a little bit cagey, but we saw a completely different impetus from this Saints side, which was great. And I think we got a lot more entertainment from it because even when Southampton went 1-0 up, West Brom still had chances. They still had opportunities. Alex McCarthy still had to keep Southampton in the game. And you just have to think, if Alex McCarthy's not in that goal and they have maybe an Angus Gunn type performance from a stopper over these 2 legs, then maybe this is a West Brom scenario in the final than it is Southampton. But Southampton fully deserving of the win, fully deserving of a place at Wembley, and finally we get some entertainment.
Yeah, I think they were deserving. I thought they were very good. I don't think they were amazing. I think they were very much helped by West Brom being really poor. However, they had one job, and that was to beat West Brom, and they did it very convincingly in the end. David Brooks was superb. He was making all sorts happen for Southampton. Will Smallbone was great. We'll talk more about him very shortly, Justin. Flynn Downs ran the game in the middle of the park. He is an excellent player, and he really showed that in this game. So crucial to a Russell Martin system as well, but he was the standout player for me on the entire park. And they defended really well too, and it could have been even more for Southampton, really. They had a clear penalty denied on the 56th minute mark, which I don't know how that wasn't given. But yeah, Southampton were really good, and I will go back to the point that I don't think West Brom particularly cover themselves in glory for this, but as far as Southampton are concerned, Russell Martin will be absolutely delighted with what he saw. I think the only disappointment from him will be that they conceded a goal. Got to be said, unbelievable header by Cedric Kipre. Also got to be said, the least cheered goal ever. I've never heard utter silence from a goal going in.
That's the weird thing about the goal is I think I must have switched off and I was on my phone at the point that the goal went in. And I all of a sudden just heard the commentator said, well, basically alluding to what you were saying nothing. No one's really cheering it. And then I just saw Southampton kicking off, and I was like, huh? And then I looked at the scoreboard, it was 3-1. And I was like, oh, right, I best just quickly rewind it and see what happened. It was complete quiet. Even the commentators didn't really make a noise. It was just, it's a strange one.
It was the most silent goal you'll ever hear. There was actually ironic cheers from Southampton, which you don't really even hear happen when a side's won 5-0 or winning 5-0 and there's a consolation goal. You don't even hear that. But that's just how comfortable it was for Southampton, really. Got to give a shout out for Will Smallbone, Justin.
Oh, yeah.
What a moment for him. He opened the scoring in this one. Had a great game, but he's just from down the road in Basingstoke. Came through the Southampton Academy. And to score such an important goal, a really special moment for him, and I felt really happy for him.
Well, I did as well, because he's been such a key player in this Russell Martin system. I know I've been a critic of the system at times, but Will Smallbone's really been a standout player because he's always brave in possession. And I mean, this started at Stoke last season. He didn't really have a great loan spell at the Bet365, and he's also been subject to criticism from Southampton fans this season. So for him, I wouldn't say it's vindication, but for him to get, well, it literally is the winning goal because it was the first goal in what was a very simple second half for Southampton. But he scored a pivotal goal at a pivotal time and took it incredibly well. And he fully deserves the credit coming out of this game because he was superb. Midfields are so important. It's such an easy thing to say, but when you've got someone who is comfortable in possession, brave in possession, and just gets the tactical side of it very, very quickly and easily as he does, and how well he's adapted into this Russell Martin team, he deserves so much credit.
Yeah, and I think he's the kind of player who fits seamlessly into a Russell Martin team, isn't he? I think he's someone who really benefits from, possession style and just maintaining the ball and keeping hold of it as much as possible. And I have seen the same as you, just in Southampton fans criticising him at several parts of this season. But I think that criticism is a bit unfair. Yeah. I think he's actually a really underrated player at Southampton.
Really intelligent as well.
Very intelligent player. Amongst all these players who Southampton have, who are relatively big names at Championship level, he may not stand out as much to the neutral or indeed, Southampton fans, but he's a really tidy player. I really like him. He's an excellent passer over the ball, and Russell Martin even said it after the game. He's been so important for us. He's selfless, brilliant teammate. He's growing in confidence, and he has the capacity to be a top player. And considering he is still only 24, he could be a really key player for Southampton going forwards over the next few years. Let's talk West Brom, Justin. Where did it go wrong for them? Because they didn't really turn up at all, did they?
I don't know. It's a bit harsh. I think I mentioned it last night when we were talking about Leeds Norwich, in that West Brom were going to have a similar game plan to what Norwich had, but I just think they executed it a lot better. They stifled Southampton at times, and Southampton almost probably took West Brom by surprise in that they exploited spacing behind that back four a lot more often than probably they would do. Southampton will like to play in front of you and try and play through you. Instead, they were playing over West Brom. And it took me by surprise, and I think it took a lot of the pundits by surprise at how direct they were with the balls at times. There were crosses from deep lying balls coming from sort of the halfway line in and over the back line or West Brom's back line, and I think it worked. I wouldn't say it allowed West Brom to struggle, but that was a key part in why Southampton were exploiting a lot of space, and maybe why West Brom couldn't defend the way they wanted to.
Yes, I agree with that. I thought West Brom were uncharacteristically open at the back, which is not something you usually associate with West Brom or Carlos Corberán team for that matter. They've been really tight at the back all season, pretty much, haven't they? But I thought West Brom were really poor. When you've got a Southampton team who, for me, didn't have to do much, and even then, Southampton still ended up winning very comfortably. I think that's really disappointing for West Brom. The game plan was clearly to try and contain Southampton, hit them when they do have the ball, but they were so wasteful when they actually did have it. The midfield were really poor in possession. I thought Grady Dean Garner had a really poor game. He's been one of the real stories for West Brom this season in terms of his kind of redemption arc that he's had this season with West Brom. But he did not have a good game at all, was also the person who gave away the ball for the first goal. So, yeah, I was really disappointed with West Brom here, considering you and I both fancied their chances of doing a job on Southampton here in the, first hour or so, it started to become quite apparent to me that West Brom probably weren't going to get anything from this game, unfortunately, Justin.
Well, I think the interesting thing here is we probably neglected, in both the Leeds Norwich conversation and this conversation about Southampton West Brom, we probably neglected the quality that both Leeds and Southampton have. They have a lot of quality, the Southampton side. I mean, Ryan Fraser has been a Premier League player for how long? Adam Armstrong's had he's had his best season ever. David Brooks is a big game player, and he's been such a key signing since January for the Saints. Joe Rebo, for goodness sake, was playing European football for Rangers at one point. So there's a lot of quality in the Southampton team that we've probably overlooked. And it showed. I think that was the big thing. It just showed. I mean, look at West Brom. They had Jed Wallace up front as a number 9, youngster Tom Fellows on the wing. Now, both players have been great in their own right this season, but compare that to Southampton's quality. It's always going to be one of those moments where if Southampton get those chances, they're going to take them, and they did. That finish by Adam Armstrong was brilliant. The finish by Will Smallbone was brilliant. So, there's two key moments there that were Southampton edge, basically.
Yeah, that is a very important point, Justin, because West Brom have a clearly inferior squad to pretty much all the teams in the playoffs, actually. And that is a point we were making, wasn't it? They've definitely got a much poorer squad than Leeds and Southampton, and Norwich even have a few Premier League players in their team, whereas West Brom don't really. It's more about the collective, isn't it? So it was always going to be difficult for West Brom. I just thought that if we were going to see a shock in one of these, I say a shock with quotation marks, in any of these playoff semi-finals, it was going to be this one, and it wasn't to be, which some people may see as disappointing because it's the two favourites in the final, but that's just sometimes how it goes, isn't it, when you've got two squads with just immense quality like these two have had. There were some nasty scenes after the game. Southampton fans invaded the pitch, which isn't uncommon in a playoff semi-final, it's got to be said, but that led to some clashes between them and West Brom fans, missiles thrown, that kind of thing, which, we joke about things you don't want to see, Justin, but these are genuinely things you don't want to see, really, aren't they?
No, it's not. It's disappointing because, I mean, even in the studio, the Sky studio after the game, all they were talking about was this incident, and that's not what you want, because it was a good game of football. It was a really good game of football when Southampton just got to a playoff final, and we're talking about fans invading the pitch and throwing missiles between two sets of supporters. It's not necessary. It's not needed. I don't think you need to invade a pitch as well if it's a playoff semi-final. I know there's an instant sort of reaction of jubilation. I'm not going to tell people how to celebrate, but you've got a big game at Wembley coming up against Leeds, and if you don't go up as a supporter, you may look a little bit silly if you just invaded the pitch and you've been throwing missiles amongst other supporters. So yeah, it wasn't really necessary, but people celebrate how they celebrate.
Yeah, I don't want to be the celebration police here because I get pretty wound up about the celebration police saying this is how you should celebrate. But I do get what you're saying. Like, first of all, you haven't achieved anything technically yet because you haven't actually got promoted. Yeah. And also, Southampton knew this win was coming for a good 30 minutes or so, didn't they? If it was, I don't know,
a Troy Deeney moment.
I was going to say a Jack Marriott moment, for Leeds Derby from 5 years ago. I could perhaps understand it, although obviously Derby were away there. I think Troy Deeney is probably a better example because obviously Watford were at home and the dramatic scenes, they warranted a pitch invasion. When it's Southampton who have had this win pretty much in the bag for 20 minutes or so, I think a pitch invasion is a bit unnecessary to say the very least. Justin, did you notice Southampton had introduced these small hoardings a couple of yards in front of the usual advertising hoardings, advertising the Saints Foundation, which seems like a nice, innocent thing to do, doesn't it? But Russell Martin admitted after the game that they did it on purpose to deliberately block Darnell Furlong from taking long throws for West Brom. That is, chef's kiss shithousery right there.
It is. It's also shithousery that is almost underhand because you're using a club's charity foundation as the excuse. So it's just brilliant. It's just brilliant. It's the sort of stuff that you see in a mafia film. That sort of underhand sort of backstabbery. It's lovely. You've got to love it. Not on a criminal point of view, perspective, I should say, but just in terms of footballing, this was brilliant. And a good tactic. And also a compliment to Darnell Furlong for having such a sling on him. It's that much of a weapon that they need to introduce fake advertising to stop it.
I'm not sure it's fake advertising.
Yeah, but it wasn't there. It wasn't there before, was it?
Yeah. It's tactically placed advertising, is what it was. I also enjoyed the verb that came out your mouth then of backstabbery, which is not one I've ever heard of before, but I would like to see us use a lot more often at every context. But yeah, that's the kind of thing we do like to see, not pitch invasions like what happened after the game. Another thing I like to see was the bloke in the Southampton end who kept celebrating with his prosthetic leg.
Oh my God, I wanted to talk about this so much.
What on earth was happening there? There's also the person who probably won't get as much attention, but the guy who was sat next to him with a sock puppet on his hand as well. It's like, what is happening?
There's so much going on. There's the man holding his leg in the air. There's the man with the puppet, and then there's a guy who I've seen very often at Southampton games dancing like nobody's watching, and I love that.
Middle-aged bald man wants it.
It's just fantastic. It's just fantastic. I mean, everyone will say, "Oh, it's probably Southampton fans, just taking the piss." No, that's how you celebrate. Hold your leg in the air. It doesn't matter whether it's a prosthetic limb or your own limb. Hold it in the air. That's how you celebrate.
Yeah,
celebration police over here.
Your celebration, please. That's okay. We encourage that kind of behaviour. But Sky panned to him at least 2 times, and each time he was absolutely loving life. Don't know what he was actually standing on, but
Is it his leg?
I sure hope so.
Is it his leg? Or is it someone else's? Or does he just bring a leg?
He just brings a random prosthetic leg to each game. It really took a second leg to a whole new level, didn't it, Justin? Yeah. There scenes we do like to see in the Southampton crowd. Something I'm not as keen to see is Rishi Sunak, who was at this game once again, the fair weather bastard that he is. It'll be interesting to see whether he turns up at the playoff final, won't it?
Where was he? Plymouth away.
Yeah. Glory supporter, isn't he? Disgraceful.
Election year.
Yeah, he's pulling out all the stops, isn't he? Do you remember when he came before? I can't remember what game it was, but he went to a game before, earlier this season, and he had a cameraman there filming his reaction to the various different moments of the game.
What a knob.
That's a genuine reaction, isn't it? Let's go to a football match and have my cameraman here picking up everything that I'm doing.
I tell you what, if he holds a limb aloft in the air celebrating a goal, he's got my vote.
No, he's never got my vote. Never in a million years. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see whether he does go to the playoff final or not, I suppose. Justin, let's have a quick break. After that, we'll talk about what's next for these two sides. Welcome back to the Second Tier podcast, and it's now time for us to see how our Second Tier bet builder with SBK got on from Wednesday's preview show. This is what we had. Half-time results be a draw. Yes. Southampton to have the most corners. That didn't win. Under 3.5 goals. Whoops. West Brom to win at full time. We've gone backwards, Justin. Oh dear. But we will be back with our final bet builder of the season for the playoff final, which will be in our live show coming up next Thursday, ladies and gentlemen. Make sure you get your tickets now. Let's talk about Southampton, Justin. They will be heading to that final at Wembley to take on Leeds United. And obviously Leeds will be keeping a keen eye on this game, won't they? I'm sure Daniel Farke will have been watching intently. But what do you think Leeds will have been thinking watching this? Will they be thinking, Southampton look like they've got the tail up again?
It's the reason why he sounded like Neil Warnock saying that.
It's just how my mind goes to sometimes.
Fair
sometimes
enough.
he just creeps in, You
just channel the old Neil. That's absolutely fine. I fully endorse that. Yeah, what will Leeds be thinking? That's an interesting one, mate. I think, given how directly Southampton were at times in this game, I think that might alter Daniel Farke's thinking. They might have to be a little bit more adaptable because they might be expecting a Southampton side who are going to want to keep the ball, keep Leeds at arm's length, keep possession and be a little bit safe. But actually Southampton mix their game up, reduce their possession a little bit, although still had more than West Brom. And wanted to had a bit more endeavour to exploit that space in behind the backies. And I think if you're going to do that, it's going to be brave to do that against this Leeds side because Leeds are, for me, are probably the best counter-attacking team in the division in terms of the players that they've got, and that's going to suit them more than playing a possession style. So yeah, I think Southampton, if they go direct, mix it up a little bit, I think it's going to cause a few headaches for Leeds. I really do, because it's, again, like Leeds last night. This performance from Southampton was a bit of an eye opener in a good way.
Yeah, I think that's fair, Justin. I think we've got to keep in mind that Southampton are the only side to have done the league double over Leeds this season. So it seems like they may have Leeds United's number. And that's something which I think Leeds fans will certainly be a bit wary of heading into the final. But Southampton now have got a bit of momentum again, haven't they? Because, of course, they had that pretty poor end to the season. We've got the win against Leeds on the final day, which was obviously very encouraging. And then they've got this win over West Brom here. West Brom, who have been one of the most consistent teams in the division this season, haven't they? And pretty much just shoved them aside and said, "Nah, we're going to the final, lads." And that's a cause for concern for Leeds. Of course, I think if you're asking me which team performed better in the playoff semi-finals, then you'd say Leeds, because Leeds were absolutely phenomenal against Norwich last night, whereas Southampton were very good, and they still deserve a lot of credit for that, but Leeds were on a completely different level, if you ask me. But it sets it up very nicely for the final. Both teams heading in there with encouragement, a lot of momentum all of a sudden, and it looks like we're going to get the blockbuster that we were hoping for the playoff final, because that's what we want, isn't it, Justin?
Oh yeah, exactly. I mean, it could have been a Norwich West Brom final. I mean, that would have been great for the narrative of the Championship. Two teams who aren't Leeds and Southampton aren't got the players that Leeds and Southampton have got. It would have been great, but this game, Leeds...
Just think of it this way, because obviously Leeds and Southampton, as we've been alluded to, have been playing really well recently.
Yeah.
Imagine if both games ended 0-0 and they ended up going to a penalty shootout in both. You'd just be like, bloody hell, this playoff final could be a bit of a drag. But we've got two sides who play really nice football.
Have a lot of talented players, and they love to attack and score goals.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the key takeaways from both sides, isn't it? And you've got an Adam Armstrong for Southampton, you've got Crescencio Somerville for Leeds, two talismanic individuals, two players who are up there in terms of player of the season. Obviously, Somerville nipping ahead of Armstrong for that, but I think that's what makes this game exciting. It also worries me a little bit that this game will finish 0-0. Because you've got so much attacking talent that it almost feels like they're going to cancel each other out, or be too scared to attack, too tentative, too timid, too scared. Like a first date. You don't want that. You want them to go hell for leather, get kissing, guys. Come on.
Yeah, I want to see that as well. Get kissing. I think it will be. It's set up to be an entertaining game, Justin, because even though we were both fancying West Brom to maybe get to the final, I think if it was Leeds v West Brom, for example, we'd see one team who were more than happy to set up camp and try to just keep Leeds out, whereas this game will hopefully...
It would have been like an Jose Mourinho Real Madrid versus a Pep Guardiola Barcelona, wouldn't it? Where you park the bus, sit
potentially
back, and
I'm not sure park the bus, but I think we would have definitely seen one side who were more than happy to let the other side have the ball, whereas this one, you've got two teams playing a relatively similar way, who are both looking to cause more harm at the other end rather than just try to soak up as much pressure as possible. You see what I mean? But of course, ladies and gentlemen, the Second Tier Podcast is the place to be over the next week and a bit as we look ahead to the playoff final. So we'll have plenty more chat about Leeds v Southampton over the coming days. But that means it's the end of the season now for West Bromwich Albion, Justin. Fallen at the second last hurdle in the playoffs. So what next for them, Justin? Is there hope on the horizon, do you think?
I am really optimistic about the future, especially under Carlos Corberán, and I think next season's championship is going to be a lot more competitive. I've said it before, I quite fancy the teams like Coventry, who have been building up to a big promotion push, and I think West Brom fall into that category as well. When you consider as well there's new ownership, I think that's a big thing. They are going to need to move players on. I think they need to reduce the age profile of the squad. That's going to be an important thing. Norwich are going to be in the same boat as West Brom. And again, a big thing to factor in, this was West Brom's final season of parachute payments. I'm just trying to think, this was their third season, wasn't it? So it was a final year of parachute payments. I mean, they're already skint anyway because they were taking loans out left, right and centre under the previous owner. But new owners come in, hopefully paid all that debt off, and hopefully can start again. And I think that's the big thing. The club's going to start again, but they've got some really solid foundations. They've got some really good players coming through, like Tom Fellows. Grady Diangane has found a new lease of life. Cedric Kipre's become a top 5 centre-half in the league. So if he stays at the Hawthorns, brilliant. So there's a lot of optimism there. It's just it's a case of keeping hold of the right players, letting the ones, the high earners who are at the end of the contracts go, and allowing Corberán to have some bloody room to manoeuvre. We've not seen a peak Corberán side yet because he was cash-strapped at Huddersfield. He's been cash-strapped at West Brom. Give him a little bit of flexibility and let's see what this guy can do.
Well, that's the thing, isn't it, Justin? We've got to keep in mind that at the beginning of the season, I'm not sure, a whole host of people were putting West Brom in the top half in their, would have predicted them to finish in the top half, let alone in the top 6 this season. But that just goes to show what a job Corberán has done, because he's managed to do all this with arguably a weaker squad than last season, with very little backing. They only signed a handful of players, a very small handful of players at that, last summer. So for them to get to this stage now where they've got to the playoffs, sure they've lost, but that is some achievement from him. He is well and truly overachieved, and the future looks bright under them. He was speaking after the playoff final, and he was saying, I think that the club is in the right hands to keep growing without a doubt, but it's not as easy as this. We need to work, we need to keep improving. This work will start from tomorrow, which is a bit of a contrast to what David Wagner was saying for Norwich just 24 hours before, isn't it? But look, it's going to be interesting to see what happens with this squad, because there's quite a few players who look like they will probably be moving on in the summer. You've got the likes of Cedric Kipre, Alex Mowat, Cal Bartley, Matt Phillips. They're all out of contract. The likes of Mikey Johnston, for example, they're only on loan. So there's going to be quite a bit of in and out at West Brom this season, and it's going to be interesting to see how many players they can bring in with these new owners, because as you mentioned, they did have their hands tied behind their back 12 months ago when the old owner was pulling out all these loans from all over the shop, which is a completely different story, which we don't have time to get into. So there's going to be quite a bit of churn in the squad, and that's going to be really fascinating to see how that's shaping up next season. But as long as Carlos Corberán's in charge, the future's bright, isn't it? Because he's just proven once again this season that he is a top tactician. You maybe even looking at top 3 managers in the division, really. And I've said it repeatedly over the past few weeks that I think it's pretty criminal that he's been overlooked for manager of the season, really. Obviously Kieran McKenna was always going to run away with that, but I think he certainly deserves his dues. And I think it's also got to be said, Justin, in hindsight, it's easy to say this with hindsight, of course, but for West Brom, they were the team who had the least to lose in this playoffs, weren't they? Because you've got the likes of the 2 teams who are now in the final, who have got massive budgets, massive squads, very talented squads. Norwich are probably going to lose some of their star players this summer, whereas West Brom, this feels like it's only the start of something special, doesn't it?
Well, yeah, I think that's the great thing is you're absolutely right. I think the best way to describe it is they not really had anything to lose, because I think if the takeover didn't go through when it did earlier on this season, then the stakes are a lot higher for West Brom, because it's Premier League or bust, isn't it? Whereas now they've got new ownership. I think Premier League would have been a huge objective for Corberán and the new owners, but at the same time, Corberán's he's had to deal with a lot. He's had to deal with the hangover from previous owners. He's had to deal with the same squad that's been at the club for the last 3 years. He's had to deal with a lot. Daryl DK's been injured as well, so he's not really had a star forward, because Jed Wallace has had to deputise as a striker. So, Brandon Thomas Asante is good for double figures, but he's not consistently enough in front of goal either. So, he's had to deal with a lot. He's had to beg, borrow and steal. So I think the optimism going forward for me is huge for West Brom. Really excited at what he can do, what the new owner's vision is actually is, because we haven't really heard a lot from them yet. Just let the football do the talking. So now, as Corberán said, the hard work starts tomorrow. Yeah,
and I'm very excited to see what that hard work does, because I wouldn't rule out West Brom improving on this season, which in itself has been a pretty remarkable season in itself. Got to remember as well, they've been pretty much fifth all season, haven't they? They have not shifted from that position. That's incredibly impressive, making a side as consistent as they have been, and that's another feather in the cap of Carlos Corberán, as we say, just a top manager. Wasn't too sure about his attire tonight, Justin. I've got to say, he basically had this white shirt on that wasn't tucked in or anything. He looked like he looked like someone at the end of a kind of club night in Ibiza who was just trying to find anyone to talk to after the night, you know?
Yeah, he looked like a guy who works in finance just been sacked.
Yeah, one of the two.
And he's gone out for a pint.
Or maybe both. That'll be an interesting night, wouldn't it? Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, this has been our reaction episode to the playoff semi-final, second leg between Southampton and West Brom. Congratulations to Southampton on getting to the final. We'll be talking about you plenty over the next week and a half here on the second tier. Commiserations to West Bromwich Albion. Just a reminder before we go, we have our live show coming up, ladies and gentlemen. Next Thursday, the 23rd of May, we'll be bringing you a bumper championship playoff final preview where we have a jam-packed show lined up for you. And as we say, it's only £5, guys. Bloody hell. It's an absolute bargain. It's a bigger bargain than Jamie Vardy was, 10 years ago. So you may as well get involved next Thursday, 23rd of May, the Horny Man at the Hayes. Why are you laughing, Justin?
It's just the vision of us being better value for money than Jamie Vardy.
Absolutely. I am not doubting it. Are you?
I'm not. If we can deliver a Premier League title, it's in some capacity, whether that be a really good time, then absolutely.
Anything's possible. Anything is possible when we've got the Horny Man at Hayes involved. So, ladies and gentlemen, we look forward to seeing you again very soon. We'll be back on Sunday, where we'll be counting down the greatest moments in playoff history in the Championship. So we look forward to seeing you then. This has been the Second Tier Podcast. I've been Ryan Dilks.
I've been Justin Peach.
And a big thank you for listening.